29.
28 seconds.
27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds.
19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12.
11.
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
What?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, welcome to Subspace Chatter, where we nitpick at Star Trek because, of course, we nitpick at Star Trek, just so you don't have to. It looks like at the moment, there's myself, Lieutenant Commander Eve Zellick of Starfleet, and my fellow podcaster beside me, Marcelo. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, Eve. I'm Marcelo. Marcelo, as Eve said. I'm a writer, a podcaster, and a giant Star Trek fan.
And I don't know where our fearless leader disappeared to, but he was here earlier.
Yeah, well, I believe that he's in the middle of eating his dinner, so I don't think he wanted to
Okay.
subject our audience to that, I guess.
Fair enough. If Dan joins us, we can add him in. Time zones, right?
Yeah, time zones.
So I'm going to go with, because we don't have an outline for today's topic, which is the first 2 episodes of Discovery Season 5, which dropped Thursday, at least Thursday here in Canada. I don't know about elsewhere.
Thursday for me too.
Okay. I'm going to throw this one out there. What's your overall impression so far of what they're doing with this season and where you think it's going to go?
I really there were certain things that I didn't like about the first episode, Red Directive, in reference to Michael being kind of flippant when she was on a spaceship in the middle of warp, because she was she was trying to basically stop the ship from going to warp, and she started joking about her flute lesson. So that to me really took the urgency out of the scene. And also I do feel that I'm not bagging on the episode. I'm just taking out the stuff that I didn't like first, and then I'll get to the good stuff. I also feel that her banter with the new captain that is going to feature in this season. His name is Captain Rayner, right?
Yeah, Captain Rayner.
I thought that their banter was really good, but I did feel that it sort of went a little bit over to being non-professional in some instances. But I feel that dialogue and that sort of tension between the two of them was needed because of where they're going to go, where they're going to go with each other for the rest of the season, and the role that Captain Rayner is going to fill on the USS Discovery. The one thing that I really did appreciate about this premiere is that in past seasons, the Discovery writers would often really stretch out the overall mystery of the season or the mystery box. And I really appreciated that in the final moments of this episode, the showrunner, Michelle Paradise, really said, okay, guys, for those of you who have been complaining about the way that we tell our stories for the past couple of seasons, here's the big exposition dump, and here's what we're going to be doing for this entire season. I'm not going to hide it from you. I'm going to give it to you right in your face. So here it is. I really enjoyed that. I really like that Michael and Book are in a strange place right now. I don't really like them as a couple, so I really appreciate them more as friends than partners, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I thought this episode was a good start, but like I said, there were things about it that just didn't fully click with me.
Okay. For myself, the first thing I thought, Star Wars.
Of course you
I
do.
mean, seriously, the planet we're on in Red Directive, it could be Tatooine or it could be Jakku, either or, whichever trilogy you prefer. But it is right down to the speed bikes, like right down to those speeders. It was just so Star Wars. And then in Under the Twin Moons, the planet there in the Beline system, to me, right away, I'm going Yavin 4 or the Endor moon. Like, seriously, like, and again, the sequences, everything, even some of the musical flourishes that were going on in some of the, like, adrenaline pack scenes was very Star Warsy. Like, I almost half expected, somebody to come out of the dust cloud with a lightsaber and start hacking away. But a couple things I like. I actually liked Michael being flippant when she's on the ship trying to disable it, because one thing that people you complained about in the initial seasons was how stiff she was. That she was incredibly stiff. She was incredibly not personable, and
Not approachable.
yeah, not approachable. Yeah. And now we're seeing sort of like she's been thrown into the future. All this has changed. And so it makes sense that her personality would change. And I kind of did like the joke about the saxophone lesson there, because it was just, like when you think about it, that's a high intensity situation. And a lot of people's reaction would be to actually be quite flippant as a way of deflecting, just what they're feeling, if that,
Right.
that kind of makes sense. But I will say one of my favorite things to play out in this so far is her personal and professional relationship with Saru. We have never seen a CO and an XO with the kind of dynamic those two have come to, where they're friends. They have a very deep emotional connection with each other. And they both managed to see something in each other that nobody else saw. And I mean, they go from being, she's above him to she's the mutineer he can't trust to she becomes his captain again. She's there when he goes through his, for lack of a better word, Kelpian puberty. The kind of dynamic that they portray, especially at the end of the second episode there, between the two of them, like that's a captain and first officer thing we really haven't seen before. We've had, Spock was always Kirk's sidekick. Riker was supposed to be the genial face of the Enterprise because Picard didn't like children and didn't like dealing with the people so much. We had Sisko and Kira who went from grudging hatred to almost grudging respect. You had Janeway and Chakotay where they kind of threw a weird romance thing in there that made no sense at all.
Yeah.
Archer and T'Pol were always at odds with each other. Like, this is one where we got to see a CO and an XO really evolve, which we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I'm so. Oh, sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
I was going to say hi, guys. I thought it was a little bit similar to. I thought it was a little bit like this season's Shaw in a way.
Oh, like Sean 7?
Yeah, or Shaw and Picard.
I would say Rayner and Burnham I could see as being a Sean Picard, because the way they have two completely different approaches. I mean, he does throw that line out there about, I've heard plenty of things about you. Like,
yeah, but also like you mentioned Kira and Sisko, but I think also like Riker and Picard, was just a little bit of a similar situation. Not so, I guess, antagonistic initially, but just the concept of that character was that when Picard makes command decisions, that Riker questions it, and there's a little bit of conflict like built into their characters, basically.
I am really happy that you mentioned the dynamic between Saru and Michael in these first two episodes, because I think that their dynamics, specifically in the second episode, is absolutely wonderful. I could have sat there for 2 hours watching these two people walk in the woods, talking about where they are right now in their friendship and where they are right now as professional people, and also how far they have come. It's really, really fascinating to see that. And their chemistry, Sneeko Martin's Green's chemistry with the great Doug Jones, the legendary Doug Jones, is so great. It's so pitch perfect. And
it
like
really
and
is.
like you, yeah, and like you said, Eve, thinking about where they came from. I mean, in the pilot of Discovery, or I think it was episode 3, where Saru basically said something to the effect of, um, "Just so you know, if you ever put my captain in danger, I am going to protect him. I'm going to do the one thing that you were unable to do."
Mhm.
Like coming from that and having that type of relationship to where they are now, and to see how much they've grown is just wonderful.
Yeah, and the Sun Planet like reminded me of the very first episodes of the season, the Vulcan Little. Like you see them in the very first scenes of the show, and they're
Right.
they're on another Sun Planet.
Right. Sand planet. Why? Yeah. Why can't it be like an ice planet?
I
If
know
it
we
were-
don't get really. We've only seen ice planets in terms of like Andoria, and even then, that was only like 1 or 2 shots here and there.
yeah, but here's the thing though.
Rudapente,
Mm, But Ruapente, we only saw in the movie, and that's because it's a prison.
Hmm. Here's the thing though. Like, would it be such a problem like to put a planet in a Star Trek episode that we've never heard of before that just happens to look like an ice planet?
Mhm.
I mean, there's no issue with that, right?
I mean, Voyager did a demon class,
yeah.
Huh?
I thought it was
and
cool that
Deep Space Nine had a rogue planet because that's the Changeling homeworld.
I
Right.
thought
Yeah.
some little references and stuff in the first episode was well, both episodes really were cool. Like they referred to the Promelians, which were in Booby Trap in the Next Generation,
Mhm.
Promelian battle cruiser, and they talk about the Breen Imperium, and up to now we've just known the Breen Confederacy to exist, so there's successor is now established as a Breen Imperium.
And that they're at
Yeah.
war, apparently.
Mhm.
Um,
Uh,
I
what?
I just want to say too, one of the things I really enjoyed, they brought back the Dadmiral. We needed Admiral Vance. I mean, there's just I don't know, to me he's one of my favorite admirals because he's one of those admirals who he knows how to do things when you can't go by the book.
Mm.
And he's like never gets ruffled. Like no matter how bad things get, Admiral Vance is just so like calm. He's just so unshakable. Like
Yeah, and he's not evil either.
no,
Yeah, he's
I
just
still think he
all
is.
sorts of awesome.
you
I
think he's
still think he's
evil?
secret. Yeah, I still think he's secretly evil. At some time, whether I think at some time it will be revealed whether that's in book, in novels after the series is finished, or just at some point he's gonna.
Uh,
So what did you
um,
think of the throwback to the Next Generation with the progenitors, and that's going to be our big mystery for this season?
I thought that it was very, very cool for Michelle Paradise in the writers' room to tie the final story of Discovery to a storyline from Next Gen. It was really, really cool that these writers were able to take a piece of existing material, and it will be really interesting to see how they expand on it and how they play with it and how they change it. Um, I'm a fan of writers who do that, but I am wary that depending on what they do, I bet there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, "Oh, you ruined it by you ruined it by changing." I'm like, guys, it's storytelling, so just chill. Um, but also, I'm really interested with the quote unquote bad guys of this season
Mhm.
with Locke and Maul. I really think that they are not as bad as they seem, because if you actually because they basically say that they want this artifact for financial gain.
Yeah.
And I think that's a load of hooey. I don't think they want it for financial gain. I think that one of them needs that thing. I think that one of them is sick. And that's the reason why they want to find this thing, because this thing is like the answer to everything. It's like the most powerful thing in the universe,
The
right?
Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail. So they believe that if they find this thing, based on my theory, this thing will fix one of them. But here's the thing: they believe that, but nobody has told them that that thing does that. What if they get there and they discover that this thing doesn't do that at all? So that would mean that everything that they've done was for absolutely nothing. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out. And another wrinkle that I don't know how I feel about yet is connecting Maul to Cleveland Booker and basically saying that she is probably the last surviving member of his race.
Mhm.
I think that that'll give Cleveland Booker a much more interesting storyline to play with this season, because I didn't like what they had him do with the bad guy from last season. I
Mm.
hated that with a passion. And I do think that at some point, Maul is going to turn coat against her lover per se, for reasons,
Yeah.
and she's gonna start working with Burnham and Starfleet.
Well, it's
And
very
the
obvious Paul wears the pants in that relationship. Like,
yeah,
that was the first thing I noticed right away. I'm like, she's got him wrapped around her finger somehow.
her little finger, yeah.
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 I'm going to throw a heavy one out there because I know both you and Dan are writers. And this was something I was batting back and forth with a really good friend and fellow fleet member of mine before the show. Stamets and his thing about feeling pushed aside because he spent his entire life dedicated to the technology of the spore drive, to the point where he even took it upon himself to alter his DNA so he could pilot the drive himself, and that it's being scrapped, it's being thrown away. And he's talking multiple times about not being able to leave a legacy. And then he sees Fred the android and he picks up on that Alton Sung little breadcrumb, and he's like, centuries later we're still talking about this man, and he's talking about his legacy. And my friend said to me that as a writer, it reminded him of how, with AI coming out now and AI being a big thing, writers being replaced with AI, and AI wiping out the legacy of people like writers. So I kind of wanted to throw that one out to you guys and get your thoughts on it, because you guys are both writers. So, and I thought it was a really interesting take that I didn't even see.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, AI does scare me a little bit. Thinking that I can get hired for a job from a studio to do something, and let's say that studio doesn't like what I initially do, and if the studio doesn't want to negotiate with me for whatever reason, if I don't dot my I's and I don't cross my T's, they could just throw me out with the bathwater and use my work and enhance it by AI, and I have no recourse. There's nothing that I can do. But the more positive side of me goes, okay, AI is something to be concerned about, but if we can figure out how to use AI to help us form our ideas and to use AI primarily as a tool, not for AI to do our job, but for AI to help us do our job, I think that's the way that it'll be used by a lot of writers in the future. But I think that's a long way off, because there are a lot of writers out there who think AI is going to replace them, is going to replace the human experience of actually writing a book or a movie.
I know the
That's
schools are starting to run things to check to see if it's been if kids' essays have been done by AI for that reason.
I think
But
you see
yeah,
the Discovery crew. You see the Discovery crew use AI as a tool as well, though, because like their ship, it's got now
Zora.
Zora. Yeah.
Yeah.
Regarding how the episode ties in, the first episode ties in with the Next Generation, I thought it was really cool and interesting. Like, not only that that it's got the projectors at the end and stuff like that, and you see Picard at the end, but also like that they tie it in with the Romulan Dr. Velik, and like I looked up the Memory Alpha entry for Velik, and like Memory Alpha doesn't even know who like played that character originally in the chase, so that's how much of a quite obscure character it is. So I thought that was really a really neat tie-in, and also thought it was an interesting, and I guess like I thought it was really interesting, like from a production thinking about the production timescale of when this season may have been filmed, to think about like what ties in not only with the Next Generation but Star Trek Picard. Like so much of it ties in with the first season specifically of Picard.
I do like
Um,
that Rayner's ship was the Picard. And when they bring up Picard, as when they're talking about the progenitors, and they bring up Picard, and everyone's just kind of like, it's like this former Captain Picard, and there's like no recognition on anyone's face.
well,
Like,
no,
I'm like, wow, like,
Rayner's ship is the Antares.
oh, is it Antares? Because they mentioned a USS Picard in there.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
There was a Picard
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah.
You know what? I did find that quite funny how, in this, or in the first episode at least, a lot of references were being made to Picard. And if Picard was mentioned in a scene with a lot of people wouldn't react. But that also reminded me a little bit of what happens to American history, right? If you look at, presidents and people that have done great things for the country that I live in, like depending on the person that you're standing next to, I can mention George Washington or Samuel Adams, and they'll go, "Who?" So I can understand a room full of young Starfleet people being in a room and hearing the name Jean-Luc Picard mentioned, and they're taking a minute to go, "Who's that again?"
Yeah, well, I sort of like had the same sort of thing about, where Fred, the android, is supposed to be a Soong type android, but specifically Alton Soong, who appears at the end of season 1 Picard, who's mentioned, and I thought, wouldn't that be, Data's creator rather than Alton Soong? This memorized.
They didn't say specifically it was Alton Soong who created it. They said that the person who created Fred obviously based him on the work of Soong, and that's why it was put in serial.
Yeah, they talk about the initials AS.
Yeah. So they haven't confirmed that it was Alton Soong, just that it was a Soong type or Soong inspired android.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I didn't realize as well, like watching it until like I looked it up, that like the Romulan puzzle box is also in the first season of Picard.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, Discovery writers really like Picard, the first season of Picard, which gives me rickets because I have a lot of issues with that first season.
Well, so yeah, I thought it might have been like written sort of in conjunction with that, but then maybe to do with the a lot of the seasons were had difficulties to do with the COVID pandemic going on at the time.
Right.
That may have presented complications.
A lot of shows did actually have issues completing. Like I remember, like you and I, Dan, we did that interview with Bruce Horak, and I remember he said that it was hard auditioning to be Hammer because he was auditioning in his kitchen because he couldn't audition in person. And so, like he said, I had to do the audition in my kitchen,
in my kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like thinking just now, like I wonder, I was trying to remember if it may have affected the production of the first season of Picard, but no, because I remember, people having worked on Picard and saying like they had, like there was a 6-day hold up between the second and third seasons, and it was then the pandemic was basically announced.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was. Actually, I wanted to say one thing. Because I love riddles. I love the riddles in this episode, like how they have to figure out the Romulan riddles to figure out what their next step is. And the funny thing is, as soon as they gave the fifth line of that verse, where it mentions, where it mentions souls entwined, like two souls entwined, and the separating of the waters and the communication of minds. The funny thing is, when I first heard communication minds, I thought, okay, that could be Vulcans or Betazoids. And then when they mentioned two souls entwined, and like seconds later, you see Tal on the screen, like you see Adira on the screen, I'm like, Trill.
Yeah. Like this season, I think is going sort of a way that I always wished, like at least one season of Picard would go, which is basically going on like or the chase, like the whole concept of like just an adventure based around like an archaeological search or whatever.
Kind of like when Cisco takes Jake on the Bajoran sunship, like the solar ship.
Yeah.
Like
There are a lot of things about Picard that I wish were different, but I don't want to get overly negative, so I'll just leave it there. But yeah, I really like the overall feel of these first two episodes, and I know that when they were initially shooting them and initially making them, they didn't have the foresight to know that this was going to be their last time around. But these first two episodes have a sense of, oh, we're wrapping up, guys. And usually I get sad when my favorite shows are in the last two seasons, or while I'm watching the last season of like something like Dawson's Creek or Felicity. But for some reason, I'm okay with Discovery wrapping up now. I don't know why that is, because I really like this. I really enjoy Discovery.
I'll be honest. I understand why some people have so much hate against Discovery. It's happened with every single Star Trek since, the Next Generation. Oh, it's not Star Trek. Well, excuse me, who died and made you God. But but for me, like when people, like even now I'm seeing people hating on Discovery yet again, and I'm going, okay, it was like 20 years since the last Star Trek TV show, which was Enterprise. Discovery is now Star Trek, an entire an entire actual physical generation later, never mind a TV generations. It's a physical generation 20 years later. I saw it as a lot of the writers trying things, experimenting, and saying, okay, this works. We are going to pursue this. Like, that's how we got Strange New Worlds, because they put Pike and Spock in there and people loved them. So they started shopping those two around at conventions and people loved the team up. So now we got Strange New Worlds, and we got a wrap up for Captain Picard's timeline, good, bad, whatever. Although I'm not too fond of the android thing, but we've got that out of it. We got Lower Decks, which is literally nothing but a letter to Star Trek fans. Like,
it's a love letter.
Yeah, exactly. Like Futurama was, in a way. I will argue that Futurama is part of the Star Trek universe, but
I'll do the same thing about the Orville, but that's just me. Sorry.
Well, I agree with you on the Orville.
Same thing. I'll do the same thing with Galaxy Quest.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's even better.
Yeah, I will go with that one too. But like to me, I look at Discovery and I'm like, okay, they were doing this 20 years after the last Star Trek. I mean, the last Star Trek movie was Nemesis in 2013. Like, this was a lot later. People have kind of forgotten a lot of Star Trek. They got to bring in, like, I don't want to be rude to the old fans that are still around, but you got to bring in new fans, new blood.
Yeah, new blood.
Because otherwise the show isn't going to survive. And what people are willing to watch on TV has changed. What people are expecting on TV has changed. And yeah, there's been entire episodes of Discovery where I'm like, come on, like, could you have stuck your foot in there anymore? Like, you put your foot in your mouth and now you're going to chew all the way up to your knee. Like, come on, guys. And then there's other episodes where I'm like, you know what? They've really got it. Like, I know a lot of people say Discovery is too woke, but yet one of my favorite things about Discovery was the first that we saw Stamets and Culber as a couple was because they were brushing their teeth. It wasn't that they were, that their whole identity was them being two men as a couple. It was they were a couple who happened to be two guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just there.
There's some things in this season, like these two episodes, that I really like in that way as well. Like I remember, like there's a scene in the second season, where you see, like Culber's and just about gay rights and stuff. He sees Book on board and he's saying like, "How are you doing?" They have a chat. So I thought that that's really good that they do take them as fully rounded characters. Rather than one-dimensional.
To me, one
Yeah.
of the more bold choices they made, and I actually got kicked out of a forum for this one. But to me, one of the more bold choices I thought they made was to do with Gray and Adira.
Mhm.
And I believe it's Adira who's talking to Stamets, and Stamets says the wrong pronoun, and Adira corrects Stamets and says they. And
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that they had an LGBT character being corrected on pronouns. Because when you think about it, that's actually kind of a bold step, because usually people, like, the stereotype is that outside the community is where where you're going to get wrong pronouns. But the fact that they chose a character and an actor who is part of that community, and the way they did that interaction, like, I really liked the way they did that. But I actually got kicked out of forum for saying I thought it was a really good choice.
Yeah, I mean, with that, people make mistakes, and if the fact that they had Stamets, like you said, a person in that, in that realm, make that mistake shows you that anybody can make mistakes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I mean, and there's no hatred after it. It's just like, oh well, I'm sorry. Like, going forward, like, I will remember this.
Yeah.
I think they did this. Didn't they do the same thing? I think in a scene with like Stamets and Empress Giorgio.
I think they did, but I'm scrolling through my Rolodex, coming up with nothing here.
Yeah, I can't. I'd have to
Okay.
go back and rewatch those episodes, because I'm sorry, but as soon as you put Michelle Yeoh on screen looking all badass, that's distracting
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. Anytime, the other reason why I feel sort of beholden to Discovery, is basically twofold. I could have never imagined that one of my favorite writers of all time was going to usher Star Trek into the new modern era. Like, that's something that I thought would never happen. And watching certain people within our fandom sort of want his head on a pike for almost 7 years now has been very distressing for me. But I've gotten over it. And also, I think why Discovery is special to me is because this is the first Star Trek show that I get to watch as it airs with everybody else. Every
Yeah.
other Star Trek show that I love, I've had to watch after the fact. So I've missed that initial fan excitement. But now with Discovery and moving forward, I don't have that anymore.
Same here, actually, because I started watching Enterprise when it came out, but I was like finishing university and everything else. Like, I was 18, I was finishing university. That's a whole other story. But I had so much going on that I missed a lot of episodes. And so I ended up rewatching it years later. And so, like you, Discovery is like my first Star Trek I got to watch as it came out. So, it's everything's new. I don't know what's coming down the pipeline. Like, I watched Next Generation knowing that at some point Picard is going to be a Borg. I
Yeah.
didn't know why he was going to be a Borg. I just knew he was going to be a Borg.
Mhm.
I watched Voyager knowing they get home, just didn't know how they got home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think going forward, I find it really interesting how they will portray Dr. Kovich. I find
I don't like him.
in
You
the
don't like
first,
Kovic? I love Kovic, but you know why? I love him because he's David Cronenberg.
He's David
in,
Cronenberg, but he's a dick. Like, the character is a
Yeah.
dick. And I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's a case of like Kai Wynn, where they're supposed to be a dick and you're supposed to, like, love them for being a dick. Maybe it's like that situation. But the second
Yeah.
he walked in, I'm like, oh, I just want to slap you.
well, I
Okay.
find it really interesting that, like, in the first episode of season 5, um, he basically says, like, if you need to, use lethal force.
Mm-hmm. That's
And how
unusual.
that's like yeah, that's extremely unusual for a Federation person to be saying. So yeah, and like I've been reading like Memory Alpha. There was an article on StarTrek.com that referred to him as an agent, a Federation agent, and some concept art. Um, it seems like gives his rank as Commodore.
Agent.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can't resist. You never
yeah.
know.
I've been wondering if he'll turn it to be in Section 31 or not.
Yeah,
Not a
there's been a lot.
Section 31 vibe.
Yeah, there's been a lot of people online who've been speculating over the past 2 days or even longer if we're going to find out what's the deal with Kovic and if we're going to find out,
Mhm.
all about him or his backstory, where he came from. And I've been shooting around the theory of I don't want to know his backstory. I don't know. I don't want to know how he got involved with the Federation. I like I like him being somewhat of an enigma. I think that's what draws me to him as a character. But also I have to acknowledge that I like dickish characters in certain things. And Kovic just checks a whole bunch of boxes for me, even if I take out the fact that he's David Cronenberg.
For me, like, it would not surprise me if it comes out he is Section 31, or it would not surprise me for Section 31 to make an appearance in this season, because I remember watching the first season of Discovery, and before Section 31 made an appearance, I remember saying to some friends of mine, I'm like, we're going to see Section 31. And they're like, you and your obsession with Section 31, like, what is your problem? And I'm like, no, but look at the theme of Discovery. And now that you bring up Kovic, look at his character. The ends justify the means. Where have we heard that in Star Trek? Section 31, the ends
31.
justify the means. And something like as powerful and as transformative and everything as this artifact they're chasing is a very Section 31 concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would not be surprised if we see Section 31 involved.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have a problem with the new iteration of Section 31, and I for one, have always said every organization needs a part of the organization that is willing to do the things that the rest of the organization isn't willing to do.
Somebody has to do the dirty work so people can live in paradise.
Yeah, that's right. Somebody has to take out the trash,
Yeah.
and Section 31 takes out the trash.
And even Spock would admit it's illogical to assume that the rest of the galaxy is going to play by the rules that the Federation has. Therefore, there needs to be. The only thing I'm hoping is that the new movie tells us why they had to go underground, because in Discovery, Section 31 is above ground. People know about it. Even in Enterprise, it was implied that it was a little bit underground, but it was still a badly kept secret. Mm-hmm. But by the time we get to Deep Space Nine, nobody's heard of it. So that's why I'm like, okay, hopefully the movie addresses the big glaring question. Why did they have to go underground? What happened?
But that scene where Kovic says, like, it's all right to use lethal force crossed my mind when Marcella was talking about Maul and Black, like, not seeming as bad as, well, not, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but you suspect they're not as bad as they seem.
Yes, that's correct.
So then I thought, well, they do kill Fred,
and he's an android. Why did they have to shoot again?
Yeah, but listen, this might make me sound bad, but I view androids as pieces of machinery. So if I have to shoot them, I'll shoot them. They're not people to me. I know that sounds awful. But yeah.
And the Romulans, according to Picard, are like totally against them.
Yeah. They're against that kind of level of AI, which again, that's interesting, because that gets into like when you and I were talking earlier, Dan, about how there was some Dune aspects to the first episode here. And in Dune, the big thing in Dune is that AI is banned. There is no AI. It's not allowed. They have some advanced technologies, but there is zero AI. But it's funny what you said, Marcelo, about, the droid, like androids are basically machinery and all that. You remind me of an interview that Samuel L. Jackson had about being in Star Wars. And he said, you can bet I am going out with a bang. I'm not being shot in the back by some droid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what made me think of there.
With the first episode, I've also found it like really interesting to see just like different views on like whether, you see the two starships, you see Discovery and then Antares, and they like, basically collide or whatever with the planet, they're
like
stand on. And like whether, like how realistic that is. And like there's been that question, and also like there's been, varying opinions about how, like, is the music to Star Wars like?
It is very Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like there were certain flourishes where I'm like, did they just lift that?
Can I just pose this question to you, Eve and Dan? Yeah. Why in the world couldn't Discovery or the other ship beam those people off I'm like, why is it like, look, Star Trek, this is supposed to be years in the future. And you're telling me that a sandstorm is going to muck up your transporting ability? I mean, come on, guys. The
Well, but
only
I think they were trying to save the town.
They said it was also the sheer number of people. There was too many to be.
Okay,
Yeah.
there was too many. Okay.
They're
Yeah,
trying
they
to
said
save
we
the
don't have
town.
enough time. They didn't say they couldn't do it. They said we don't have enough time, which
Okay.
implies that there was too many people, which we've seen that happen before where they've wanted to do an evacuation, but they just don't have enough time. Because
Okay,
the transporters can literally only beam so many.
Right.
I mean,
So
even if
us-
we've got spacesuits and phaser guns that appear out of thin air, literally,
Nowhere.
we still got limits on how many people we can transport at once.
Yeah. And my last nitpick about this episode, but this is more of a technical point of view. I really, really like the in-house director for Discovery. I can never say his name right, so I won't even attempt it. But he has a thing. Every episode that he directs, he likes to play with the camera, and I'm like, good God, I really like you as a director, but I hate when you do that. Why
Is
does he do
that-
that? It drives me mad.
Yep.
Is that
I
all the
can't stand
Tunde
it.
up in Sunday?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. I
something.
can never say his
Yeah.
name right, and I don't want to.
Yeah,
come across
shaky
as-
camera. He's got shaky camera. I mean, we had first we got the lens flares of J.J. Abrams.
Yeah,
and now we're getting shaky camera. It's a little bit.
Yeah,
But he's due to
but
direct Section 31 as well. The TV movie.
That's great. That's great. Seriously. When I watch Section 31, I'm going to start a drinking game, and I'm going to take a shot every time he starts to sing with the camera off tilter. And by the end of the movie, I guarantee you, I'll be drunk.
So you and I are playing that game together, is what you're saying? Because I'll do that too.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. We'll do that. We'll coordinate. We'll do that.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a
especially if I
nitpick.
go to a movie theater here, and we have a movie theater that's 10 minutes from my house where you can actually drink in the theater.
Oh, cool. Like Animal Attack.
Yeah.
I had I had a bit of a nitpick about when they board the Romulan science vessel, which I thought was cool because it seems to match the design of the vessel from the Defector in the Next Generation. But like Burnham boards the vessel with a Washington and with I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Was it Reese?
Reese, thank you. Yeah, Jan Reese. Yeah, and I thought, like, where's the security? Like, she's taken 2 bridge officers with her. Like, surely they're like overqualified for that mission of boarding and trying to stop the thieves.
Yeah. Michael strikes me as a person who only takes people with her that she absolutely trusts. And Michael, look, if there's one thing about Michael Burnham that we've learned in the 5 years that we've seen her do her thing, she's a very, very Kirk-like type of individual. So so I strongly believe that Michael is a person that will jump first and ask questions later.
Well, I mean, she was even saying she would draw the fire of those remote weapons, and Saru's going, no, my reflexes and speed are greater than yours. And that reminded me of a Kirk and Spock type moment where Spock had to remind Kirk a few times, like, I'm a Vulcan. I have more strength and everything than you do.
Right. And also in that moment, Saru reminded her that in this equation, she's the most important person. Saru is important, but Saru in this example is not that important. She's the captain of the ship.
I actually really liked one thing about that whole thing too. I loved when Saru put his fins out and he shot the needles.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Because we so rarely get to see the natural defenses that alien species would have evolved. Like we saw the electrocuting aliens in the episode with the 2 planets where one was addicted and the other one was feeding the addiction. Like we saw that electrical thing, but we so rarely see any species engage in using their natural body defenses that they've adapted. So to me, that was a really neat shot when he put out his fins and then,
Yeah. You're right. You're right. We haven't seen Saru use his natural defenses that much ever since he figured out how backwards his own culture was.
Just an off topic here. Did anyone notice in the scene at the beginning of the first episode when they're at the party, one of Morn's species is at the bar?
Yeah. Ludian.
I did not notice
I
that.
always forget what Morn's species is, but I saw it right away and I'm like, hey, look, it's one of Morn's cousins.
Yeah, a Ludian. But yeah, that the natural defenses thing always reminds me of like the Zindi and how they they shoot like phasers or whatever, and then it sprays out like a ball thing that then ejects these darts from it.
Because, like, yeah, we rarely see any species use any kind of thing that they've adapted over the years, as an evolutionary thing. It's mostly reliant on weapons. Even the Klingons, like, yeah, they've got all those redundant organs, but shouldn't they have some kind of built-in natural defense from before they had weapons?
Right. Yeah, I'm very, very excited to see where this final season is going to go, but I really, really hope that the writing staff really balances the episodes where they're collecting clues to where to help them to get to where they need to go in a more palatable fashion than they've done in previous seasons. Because in previous seasons, like I said before, and this is the last time I say it, they sort of stretched out the overall hunt to the thing that they were going towards, and I do not want that for the last season of Discovery. That's just me.
We don't want season 3 of Picard where they spend like 4 episodes just sitting in a nebula doing nothing.
Yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
One of the things I want to throw out there too, because we haven't discussed it, Saru's relationship. I mean,
Now, how does that work? Like,
did you notice that particular Vulcan? She seems more older Spock-like in that she's more balanced as opposed to I am logic. She seems very, very balanced. But like, what do you think of Saru's relationship?
I think it's wonderful for him to have somebody that he can confide in like that, and to have somebody that he can trust like that is absolutely wonderful. But I was actually thinking in the moment, I was like, I thought he was going to propose, but the fact that she did was like, wow, I did not see that coming. And like you said, she seems to be a Vulcan that's more open than your standard, uptight Vulcan, logic overall. I bet you, I mean, I don't know if this was said or anything, but I bet you that either she has some relatives that were human or something, but I don't, there's something about her that is apart from your standard Vulcan.
She reminds me more of Sarek when we see Sarek in The Next Generation. Like, her personality really reminds me of Sarek. Because Sarek in the original series was not balanced, but Sarek, by the time we see him in The Next Generation, he's way more balanced. Right. Whereas, I mean, most of the other Vulcans, I mean, Spock got more balanced over time, which is fair. The character evolved. But then we've got others like Tuvok, and Tuvok is an aggressive jerk from day one, and he stays an aggressive jerk. I mean, Neelix has it right when he tells him, you're not logical. You are angry. You are rude. You are sarcastic. You are not logical.
Okay, just 1 minute. I like Tuvok, but you're making sense. But also, I'm the guy that wanted to shoot Neelix out of an airlock since day one. So I think that I just don't... I can't stand Neelix. Like, I want to just, God damn.
I totally get that the character is like polarizing, but when you think about it, Neelix in a lot of ways was somebody they needed. Like, he was the one who told Tuvok his approach with the Maquis was completely wrong.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
The one who was able to tell him, this is what you do. And I mean, when push came to shove, Neelix's heart was in the right place. I mean, who was there when Tuvok lost his memory? Neelix.
Yeah, speaking about Vulcan portrayals,
and
speaking about Vulcan portrayals in the Maquis, it was really interesting that you see a Vulcan, as part of the Maquis.
That part I never figured that out. I always wrote it off as, okay, he's a security officer, so for him it would be logical to act that way.
No, but in Deep Space Nine, there's at least one Vulcan in the Maquis. Well.
But I mean, I could see in a twisted sort of way how a Vulcan with a certain kind of logic could justify it. Because didn't Janeway say that logic can be used to justify anything, and that's its power and its weakness?
Yeah.
I think it was Janeway. I can't remember. I know one of the captains said it. But I mean, yeah, poor Neelix. I mean, at the end of the day, Neelix was really the heart of the ship, whether you liked him or hated him. And I mean, nobody could have been a better stand-in father for Naomi Wildman, considering.
Or
Uh-huh.
Guide to the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah, I just don't like the character. Like, if there's one thing about Voyager that I would have loved to be in the room for, I'm like, okay, this guy can be funny, but we have to turn it down, like, because he was like at 200 from
Yeah.
moment one. I was like, can we just move him down to like 95%?
It's like
And then-
Wesley would have been a better character if he had been less insufferable.
Insufferable.
No, he would have been a good character, but he was just
Yeah.
he was too much.
Yeah. He was too much too fast.
Yeah.
Now going back to Discovery for a moment, I really get the sense that the season is going to end with a wedding, and I'm going to have a problem if Burnham doesn't show up for the wedding, and if she is not Saru's best man or your best person, I'm going to have an issue. And if somebody does not sing Blue Skies at the wedding, I'm going to walk out because somebody has to sing Blue Skies.
Well, in the first
Are you
episode,
imposing your wedding traditions on other cultures, Marcelo? How dare you assume?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
How dare you assume that the Vulcans and Kelpians have your wedding traditions? I mean, from what we've seen, Vulcans consider weddings and mating an extremely private matter.
I do.
Extremely private.
I do, but the fan in me just likes Star Trek weddings. So
Well, I
just
think
the
you
fan
may
in me.
have just thank you, Eve, because I think you may have just basically answered like one thing I was wondering, which was in the first episodes in season 5, you see like when Tarina asks Saru to marry her, and I was watching it and I was thinking like that's quite an unusual, to me at least, like that's quite an unusual like editing choice, and
Mhm.
for the place to just leave the scene where Saru doesn't give like
Cliffhanger.
he doesn't say yes or he doesn't say no. The question is just asked, and maybe that's because they view it as so private, perhaps.
Yeah, plus the way she words it, she says codify our relationship. Like she talks about it almost like in terms of like when people write a prenup and then go to the courthouse to get married. Like she's talking about it very clinically. And he says, "You mean marry?" And she goes, "Some cultures use that term." Yes.
Yeah, I
So,
thought that was very Vulcan of her.
but we do know from the past, like when it comes to Vulcans, especially because of how mating happens for them, it's extremely private, like Spock in Amok Time, Tuvok in Voyager, even Sarek and Amanda don't really demonstrate affection for each other when we see them. They just do like the finger thing and that's about it. And anytime relationships get brought up in terms of the marital sense, Vulcans get very closed off. So I see it as if they got married, it would probably be an incredibly private affair because we don't know what Kelpian wedding traditions are like. I mean, considering Kelpians have a really messed up way of being, unfortunately. But Vulcans, we know, tend to keep anything relationship wise, they tend to be very, very private about it. So
Just let me throw this in here. With the fact that she is so open, right? That to me gives me a little bit more space to have my fan wish in that she'll just make Saru happy and she'll go through the ceremony, even if she doesn't want to. She'll just do it for him anyway. But
Saru's pretty private too. He's very private.
That is true.
Yeah, he's very private with his emotions. Because when we see him have emotional moments, like in Under the Twin Moons, when he has an emotional or character moment, it's always one-to-one.
He holds it in.
Yeah, it's one-to-one. It's never, I'm going to burst into tears on the bridge or something. It's very private.
Yeah, when he thought he was going to die was another example of that.
Right. Yeah, and I mean,
like when he had his puberty,
the only one that they wanted there was the mutineer. Well, she wasn't a mutineer at that point, but the only one that they wanted there was Michael Burnham. So,
which, when you think about it, makes sense because they're both outsiders in a sense. I mean, she was sent off to Vulcan to live at a young age because she thought her parents were dead, and so she was a human raised on Vulcan and dealt with a lot of, xenophobia or racism, whatever word you want to use. She dealt with a lot of being the outsider. And Saru is literally the first and only of his race to ever join Starfleet. And he had to petition to do it and everything else, And even when he starts out with Starfleet, like that first episode of Discovery, when Georgiou says to Burnham, like, what does Saru think? And she's like, he's scared. And she goes, he's Kelpian. He's scared of everything. Like, they're both outsiders who've had to find a way to prove that they belong, which to me throws us back to a certain young Ferengi ensign.
I like that. I like how you brought that home.
Like, to me, Saru reminds me of Nog. He wanted to be more. He knew the way to be more was the Federation, but and Starfleet, but he knew it was not going to be an easy path.
Right.
Like, he reminds me of Nog in a lot of ways.
Also, his culture, like, being like really about like a completely different worldview and stuff than the Federation in both cases.
Well, it was interesting when they established the whole, like, what the truth was behind the predator and prey aspect, because it made me think of Star Wars, where Chewbacca's race, the Wookiees, are the prey on their planet. And I'm going, what the heck does the predator look like at that point? So when they established that Saru was escaping culling, I'm like, well, if he's got all these things and he's kind of scary and got all these things we don't know about, what the heck is hunting him?
Yeah.
I
think it seems like they've sort of settled their differences or whatever by the 32nd century.
Yeah. And I mean, the mirror universe has stopped eating them like food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a little cannibalistic to me. I'm sorry, but it was.
Yeah. Over or under, we're going to see the prime Philippa Georgiou in the episode entitled Mirrors in the season coming up.
Yeah, I was going to mention this. And also, like, I was wondering, it crossed my mind that maybe Kovic is Future Guy from Enterprise.
No, the Future Guy so far is Archer.
Isn't that Jonathan Archer?
Yeah, it's Jonathan Archer. They've just never made it.
Several options were considered while Enterprise was in production, including Jonathan Archer and a Romulan.
Yeah, they've said so far it's Jonathan Archer. So unless they're gonna backtrack that one,
it could be anything because, or not to objectify Future Guy, but he could be anyone.
I'll be honest, I'm campaigning for it to be Archer because Scott Bakula in Quantum Leap, it would just be too perfect.
Mm-hmm. And we need more Scott. We need more Scott Bakula, aka more Enterprise in modern Star Trek.
Especially because Archer's the first president of the Federation.
Right.
So, but
I noticed. I think someone posted like an April Fool's or whatever, saying like, "This is the next show we need," and it showed like Star Trek Janeway, and I was like, "Well, what about like Deep Space Nine and Enterprise? Like in modern Trek, it seems to me like they've been given like in general like very short shrift compared to like Voyager."
Well, Deep Space Nine is going to be hard for them to bring back because Avery Brooks has said he's done. He's done acting.
It's always been in my mind like they could potentially like recast the character.
Yeah.
And then claim it's just it's just the way he chooses to appear because he's really a prophet.
Yeah. He's a god.
Like a Q, where they can change their appearance.
Yeah. But I like one of my favorite Star Trek shows, period, and stop, is Enterprise. And I've been saying for a long time, like, Enterprise needs their proper conclusion. And if Alex Kurtzman or if the people at CBS would find it in their heart to do like one more animated season, that would be cool. Because if you did it animated, it would be expensive, yes, but you wouldn't have to worry about the physical way that the actors look nowadays. You wouldn't have to worry about that.
I'll go one past you and say do it as movies. and do it because I mean we're supposed to be basically like that one's the one that leads into the Romulan War, if I remember right in the timeline.
Right.
So, and the Romulan War we know was fought remotely, like neither side saw each other, which is why it's such a big reveal that the Romulan looks like Spock. But for me, like do like 2 or 3 movies and give us the Romulan War, because that's something that would work within a movie type setting. And then you wouldn't have to explain the age of the actors, because I mean, we got a very chunky Captain Kirk in the motion picture years later, so you wouldn't
Yeah,
have
we
to
did.
explain the aging at that point.
We did.
Do you feel like we know like the main character, well, the bridge characters basically of Discovery enough?
No, we do not. Like
Some of them are very underused, like a Wosha Kun.
as
And
much
it still hasn't been established that whether Culber is the chief medical officer.
They've never said it. Yeah, you're right. They've never said it. We just kind of
After
assume
5
he
seasons.
is.
Yeah.
as much as I love Alex Kurtzman and I worship the ground that that guy walks on, but his failure or his writer's room failure to really give a chunky backstory to the supporting bridge characters drives me up a wall and it makes me mad.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out here. Do you think maybe it's because he was trying to recapture the original series, which essentially was Kirk, Spock, and McCoy have an adventure and leave everyone behind?
That's possible. That's totally possible. I'll give you that. But what I'm used to and what I like is, again, this is the entitled dumb fan me coming out, so you have to excuse me.
We're
What
all
I'm
entitled
used
fans.
Yeah. What I'm used to is I really like the Michael Pillar school of working, saying, okay, this episode is going to be about this character, this episode is going to be about this character, and so on and so forth. But I understand that this new iteration of Star Trek is more serialized. So take 2 or 3 background main characters and integrate them into the main story that you want to tell with Michael Burnham. And you could explore their characters in that way. But, Kurtzman and the writing staff chose not to do that. That to me is one of their biggest failings in the entire show.
Because really the only 4 they've managed to do is Burnham, Saru, Stamets, and Culber. We've had episodes featuring, but everyone else just kind of gets pushed aside. And I mean, I'm going to point out the obvious one, Ariam. We barely get to know her and they kill her.
Yeah.
I really liked how they used Tilly in these 2 episodes. Like I thought they might she leaves for to basically work at Starfleet Academy in the 4th season. I thought they sort of might, wharf her in the, like in the TNG movies, like there's no explanation at all for why he's come back to the Enterprise. Or well, I should say in Insurrection and Nemesis, there's not really much of that. And but at least like she does talk about like she's given time away from the academy and stuff like that, come season 5 of Discovery. So I thought that was a good step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually was really happy to see her again. I mean, I love the actress. I love the character. She's, she when I saw Strange New Worlds and they introduced Uhura having sort of the same feelings, like, do I belong here? Having some imposter syndrome. Am I capable? And that threw me back to first season Tilly, where Tilly's like, do I really belong here? Like, am I good enough? I'm weird,
Mm-hmm. And it seems like in a way, like, well, basically I watched like these 2 episodes maybe like a month ago, receiving the previous screeners, but so I've recently rewatched the first episode in full and about half of the second episode, and about the start of the second episode, like, like I said, like the first episode gave me flashbacks to like the very start of the show. The second episode of the Jungle Planet basically gave me like flashbacks to like halfway through the first season, where like they're on like a sort of jungle planet, and I think it's Si Vis Pacem Parabellum, it's called, something like that in Latin. And it's, again, it's Burnham and Saru together, in that sort of environment. Then, like, at the start of the second episode, it gave me sort of flashbacks to the start of the second season with sort of Burnham giving a voiceover that's very philosophical. There's the very start of the second season is a bit like that, and then she like I thought it's really interesting where you're talking about the personality changes basically, and thoughts that are cutting to Tilly, and the like Burnham also goes through like a bit of a character transformation, because she's like up to now I always thought like my purpose was the mission, but like the fact of like they're on the search for like the life generating technology, but the progenitors have left, gives added purpose for her character.
You just made me think of something. That's why she now clashes with Rayner, because Rayner is all about the mission. It's the mission, the mission, the mission. So I think maybe some of that's where their clash comes from, is because she sees that that's how she could have ended up if she didn't evolve over time, would be like him, like the mission, the mission, the mission, everything else doesn't matter, but the mission.
Yeah, and also like it seems like Book goes through a bit of a personal transformation as well, because like so much, he goes when he's introduced in the start of the third season. He's so much about preserving these animals, and so much about like acting from his heart, as it were. And then in both of these first two episodes, he's like, I just go where the Federation tells me.
Yeah. I have a question. This is a nitpick. The hologram communication technology, when he's got Maul and Locke, their holograms communicating with him in the science bay on Discovery there. When somebody projects their hologram to communicate, can they see other people in the room? Because we had like Stamets just off to the side there and stuff, but there was no indication that they saw him or knew he was there.
I gather that they can. I mean, if they couldn't, I would be like, why can't they? It's a hologram. You can do whatever the heck you want with holograms. I mean, within reason, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the first episode, they've got like Admiral Vance appearing by hologram.
Yeah. No, it was just one of those weird things that stuck out to me, because I'm like, how do they not notice him sitting there? Like,
yeah.
But I assumed like that they can select like how much of field of view like the person can see and stuff like that.
I will say one thing: if the background of the jungle planet was not green screen and CG, it looked green screen and CG. It really did. I don't know why, but something seemed off about it.
I think it's interesting you say that. Like, I noticed there was a person on Twitter or X that pointed out that on the jungle planet you can actually see a production crew member.
Yeah. The background plates for this episode were kind of a little sus, definitely, because you could definitely tell that there were visual effects there, and with the AR wall or whatever they used, if they do it right and if they have time, you don't see that.
Yeah, it just seemed like right away something seemed off about, like, my initial thought, other than it looked like Star Wars again, was like the ruins, like the head and everything, the ruins buried in the jungle, was making me think of when explorers first discovered Angkor Wat in Cambodia, like a temple hidden in the jungle, lost to time, that people had forgot about, with artifacts there. Like, it really reminded me of that. But at the same time, I was like, something is wrong. Like, those leaves just don't look right. Like, nothing looks like it. It's like that uncanny valley thing, but instead of with people, it's uncanny valley of background. Something's just wrong with it.
I really like those huge remains, and it gave me like flashbacks to the Next Generation episode, The Arsenal of Freedom, where it's got like a jungle planet and similarly automated defenses like that.
Yeah, the weapons, the little thingies. Yeah.
I said that in every review that I've been on this weekend about these two episodes, but I'm glad that you caught that too, Dan, because I thought I was the only one, because I was the only person to bring that up in every single conversation I had this weekend about these two episodes.
And then also like how it's like picking up a thread from the Next Generation, and sort of with a highly advanced species and basing a a sequel story on that was sort of like, especially with also a Jungle Planet, was giving me flashbacks to there's a Deep Space Nine episode where it involves Lyconian gateways.
Yeah. I know the one you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, but the other thing that I'm really nervous about, which this is something that I would suggest if I was in the writer's room, but I would do this. I would just suggest it to hear everybody's reaction. I would actually kill one of the main cast. Just to
there's precedent for that. We
Yeah.
we usually end a series by killing somebody who's important.
Yeah. So I mean, I would do this because I just like her so much, and to me it would be really sad and gut punching. I would find some way for Tilly to sacrifice herself for
I don't think that's going to happen because of the Starfleet Academy series that's coming up.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So
you know what? If they're going to sacrifice somebody, then they need to make sure they stay dead, because that's getting
that's right. Stay dead. Yeah,
like
stay dead.
How many times have they brought back poor Data? Like,
yeah. Well, yeah, and also if they're going to do that, it can't be Culber because that guy's already died once.
Yeah.
Actually,
take out Stamets.
That's a good idea.
The reason being, I just thought of this. There goes my ADHD brain. I just thought of this. Stamets has really been the last season and this season talking about leaving a legacy and how his legacy is ruined and he's not going to leave a name for himself. And, he's very much involved in the idea of what he leaves behind when he goes. Like he's very focused on his own mortality.
Right.
And that really reminds me of Data, because how much did Data wrestle with the idea of his own mortality and how there wouldn't, he'd go on living long after all the people he cared about passed away and everything else. I'd almost think that you take out Stamets, especially because then you get the emotional impact, because let's face it, Stamets and Culber are one of the good Star Trek couples. They're one of the couples where their marriage makes sense. It works. You can believe it's a marriage.
Yeah, now that you say that, his dialogue in the first episode about him with him being so upset about Starfleet moving away from spore drive technology, it seems like they're setting him up for a big fall.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Makes sense.
It's been so integral to his character that he literally has the technology implanted in himself. Like it just you just kind of make me think of it there, because I'm like, a lot of what he's saying reminds me of Data. And in The Next Generation, I believe the original idea was they were going to kill Geordi in the movies. And then it was pointed out that as cool as Geordi is, it wouldn't have as big of an impact on the fans. So kill Data.
His blonde short hair and sort of emphasis of expertise on engineering to an extent makes me think of Chip, who does die, or hologram Chip does die. Then
yeah, but Chip is now in Section 31. He dies and he goes to Section 31.
According to the novels.
But yeah, I could see that. I just, like, now that you were saying like kill off a main character, my first thought, Stamets would actually make sense, especially because we saw how it affected him when Culber died. And
to have the reverse now would be fun.
Exactly.
I thought it's interesting because in the first episode of season 5, someone says that Discovery will always be like
one of a kind.
Yeah, one of a kind. However, like way back at the start of the series, they did have another ship that had spore drive as well. That went kaboom. And also, it kept reminding me of having read. There's I think it's an annual that's got a comic story in it that's all about basically Stamets and includes Culber as well. But it's about like the origins of the spore drive program.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think if they're gonna kill off somebody, you kill off
Stamets, right?
Yeah, it makes the most sense at this point.
To me, it would be concerning that they would do that. I think because there's a trope about killing homosexual characters that they
Star
already
Trek
wanted.
has never killed a gay main character. Like,
Yeah, they have Culber.
well, Culber, yeah, but he came back.
Yeah, but
But
that's why he came back, and so soon came back, and they were like, they made it a point to ensure viewers that he will be back. So I don't
Yeah.
think they would want to do it again.
still could happen, especially because I mean, and I don't know if I'm going to word this correctly, so forgive me in advance if this comes out wrong, because I'm an accepting person. Even when I don't understand things, I accept people. But because of the way they treated them when they first came on the show, as our first knowledge that they were a married couple was they were brushing their teeth together, and there was no big deal made about it. It was just, oh, okay, they're a couple. And there's been, just the odd bit of dialogue, even in this episode, where Stamets says, "Oh, you married a pack rat," stuff like that. To me, if you want to continue with Discovery's trend of treating it as relationships of all kinds are so normal in the future that nobody cares anymore to make a big deal about it because it's in the future and we've gotten past all that, then that would just be, to me, another way of showing that, yes, nothing different here. They're no different than any other couple. There's no special treatment. This is how it is.
I think it would make more sense.
Pardon, Marcelo?
I accept that. I buy that.
I hope I worded that correctly. I'm not trying to offend anyone. Like it's one of those issues that's very, very, it's one of those things that's very, very hard to be able to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It would make more sense to me if Saru was to die, because like having as we know from short tracks, having like basically grown up on his home planet where he thinks like people are like sacrificing themselves, and that's what their ultimate fate is, that they are dying, even though they're, as we realize later, they're not. Mm-hmm. And then all the thing about like him having believed that he was going to die and then it not,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would make more sense to me than perhaps he could be referred to or shown in future Star Trek productions, but like you see like his like the time period that he lives in is from then to then, sort of thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
They very rarely kill off the first of any race in Starfleet. Like even Nog, they didn't kill Nog off. They just had him shot in the leg.
Yeah.
But didn't they also take his leg?
Well, they took his leg, but they didn't kill him.
Right. That's true.
They didn't kill him. And I mean, we already know that in their future, amputees end up basically with extremely high-tech prosthetics. Yeah.
Yeah, new legs. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Spock died.
Huh?
Spock died.
Spock died, and then they brought him back.
Yeah.
I mean,
actually, but
then ultimately he dies as well in Beyond.
True, but it depends if you can. But Beyond's the different timeline, so you have to take that into account.
It's still Spock Prime.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the Buffy line. What are we gonna do if the end of the world comes? Hey, we'll figure it out. I died twice.
Mm-hmm.
For those Buffy fans in the audience, probably there are none.
Oh, I know. I watched Buffy.
Awesome.
I watched it. I actually once had a student whose name was Xander after the character.
No
in Buffy.
way. Yeah. Buffy. Yeah, but just real quick aside, guys. Buffy is my third favorite show of all time, so I love Buffy so much.
I watched it for Allison Hannigan because that woman is a brilliant comedian.
And she's pretty good.
And considering the thread so far, we've been discussing the LGBT aspect of shows. Well, she's in that show anyway. She's LGBT, so.
Yep. Do you think there was a reason why, like, there are certain recurring or certainly known characters among the Discovery crew, like Grudge and like Gray, who were not and Reno were not deliberate, not brought back in the first season of season 5? Do you think there was a reason for that?
Well, Gray, we know Gray isn't Gray's symbiote is with us, but Gray is not. So that part makes sense. And I think we might see the symbiote because we've seen the interaction between Adira and the symbiote appearing as Gray. But it was, I believe, the last time Gray appeared, Gray said that they may not see them again or something like that. I think it was implied heavily that we wouldn't see that character again. But that but that the character would continue to exist through the symbiote, which we've seen with the Dax character.
I thought it was quite a strange choice for Grudge not to appear but be referenced.
And then Grudge showed up.
Yeah, in episode 2.
With the little mousey, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that, which I'm kind of glad they brought Grudge back.
Yeah, with a mouse, like, is there anything that's considered too small to represent with holograms?
I don't think so.
I don't think so in the laser aspect of the mouse. Well, I'm allergic to cats, but I know cats will chase lasers.
Yeah.
Like they
I
find
don't
it
like cats or dogs.
I'm allergic to cats, but I am a dog mom, love my dog, but I also understand not everyone's a pet person.
Yeah, I'm lame. I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's not lame. You know what? Some people, hey, there are people in my family who aren't pet people. And I mean, even in my boyfriend's family, there are people who aren't pet people. But I mean, yeah, I am definitely a dog mom. That said, this is the only dog for me. And when she crosses the rainbow bridge, I'm done. I'm not having another.
Okay. Speaking.
Sorry.
Oh no, sorry, Dan. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just wondering, like, what you would like to see happen with Book.
I would like to see him be loyal to Michael Burnham, because after what he did last year and the way that his grief blinded him really drove me mad. So if he could be more open with Michael and more open with the fact that one of the big baddies of this season, Maul, is related to his culture, I would like to see him be more open and work with Michael Burnham more on a friend level. And it's been postulated by several people that if something does indeed happen to Raynor at some point this season, that Book will possibly become Michael's number one. I don't like that idea at all. I'm very, very against Book joining Starfleet.
It doesn't fit to have Book join Starfleet, but I would like it to be I would be okay with it being like an ongoing thing, like an alliance where they work together when they need to and stuff, because they do work together quite well.
They do, yes, they do.
But I don't like initially I like the relationship between them, but I think at this point, if that relationship was rekindled, I'm going to totally check out because it wouldn't feel right. But then again, I'm one of those people who was like, what the heck was with Chakotay and Seven? That came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that was like at the last minute. I have no idea what
like
they were thinking with that.
Seven and the Doctor, I could have totally believed.
Mm-hmm.
They had way more in common. Seven and Chakotay, he almost felt more like he was her pet.
Okay, that's a way to put it. I've never heard it put like that before, but there you go, folks.
But I mean, like, think about Seven's personality. She's very dominant. She's very aggressive. She's very forefront and forthright. Whereas Chakotay started out strong, and they just kind of kept watering him down.
Yeah, no, but also, like, they kept, and I mean, in Voyager, they kept teasing to him having affection for Catherine, and I'm like, I mean, I understand the politics, the on-ship politics with that, but for them to explore a relationship between them, I thought would have been interesting.
Like we talked about like the Vulcan Tarina, but I was wondering, like, what would you say, like, the relationship that she has with Saru adds to the show?
I really think that it spells out that cultures that are completely opposite from each other can find common ground and can find ways to respect each other and love each other. And I think that's a big red flag that any civilization, if they take certain steps to join each other in the areas that really matter, anybody can come to an understanding. It's just a matter of how far people and species are willing to go for one another in accomplishing what they want to accomplish together.
I think it shows a good evolution of Vulcans because now we're in the 32nd century or whatever. I mean, and the Vulcans, as we know them in Enterprise, which is humanity's first big trek out in the world, the Vulcans are incredibly xenophobic. The Vulcans are incredibly arrogant. They're incredibly closed off. And we've seen the odd Vulcan human relationship like Sarek and Amanda. T'Pol and Trip didn't feel quite right, but whatever. We've seen those kind of things. But to me, it shows that the Vulcans have truly evolved to embrace other cultures like they claim they have all these years, but really haven't. And for Saru, I think it adds another dimension to the character because he never thought he was going to live past a certain age. You know, he never thought he was going to experience all these things he's experienced. So for him, this is like his new final frontier, like navigating a relationship with somebody outside his culture, outside his world, that somebody where as a child he would have not even known they existed. You know, so I think and we do see some differences, like differences in how him and her interact. Like, you know, he's totally shocked that she essentially proposes marriage, you know. So I think it's going to help push Saru as a character a little bit more. Like, it's going to add to his character. And for her as a character, I don't think it adds much, but as the species, it's a nice step forward because really the only non-Vulcan pairings we've seen have been Vulcan and human. It's kind of nice to see Vulcans being
And
willing to
Kelpians.
embrace more others. Yeah, willing to embrace
Right.
others.
Mhm.
Because I mean, we've had human Klingon and Vulcan human. Like, come on, can't these guys mate with something other than just a human?
Well, they're going to now for sure. If if Saru and the Vulcan president choose to go down that route, which they probably will. But
Yeah.
how that works, I have no idea, and I don't want to know either.
I don't want to know either. I mean, Dan knows this in Starfleet. There is entire literature on how different races reproduce. And
Yeah, I don't care about that. Thank you very much.
I mean, the closest we ever got was Jadzia and Worf, where there's that one episode where it's commented that they are hoping to have a child, and they said that Dr. Bashir said it was possible, but it might require, you know, some help or interventions along the way to be successful.
Right.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting as well. Like you, like Daxter, Jadzia, and we've talked about trills and stuff in this program, and that'll figure into the third episode of this season. But I thought it was interesting today. I looked up like where else the name Moll, Moll, has been used in Star Trek, and apparently like there's a trill that goes by that name. I think in the comics or something like that. And also I thought it was interesting that in the first episode of season 5, like they were celebrating the founding of the Federation, and like I don't remember that being celebrated before. And you know, I thought that's a bit odd. Like they're, you know, by the 32nd century, they're finally like celebrating it.
It could be because it was post-burn, like that was mentioned too, like that they couldn't do it, you know, for a long time. They couldn't even recognize it because of the burn. But it's interesting what you said about the name Moll, because Moll also used to be a slang in the 1920s for the girlfriend of a gangster. And by gangster, I mean like the ones we see in the the episode Piece of the Action, like that kind of gangster. The girls that were with these guys were referred to as malls. It was a slang. So I found that an interesting, I don't know if that was done deliberately, but I found that interesting.
Like moles and dolls.
No, mugs and malls is what they used to call them.
Mm.
Mugs were the
Mugs and
guys and
malls.
malls were the dolls.
Yeah, I'm sad to say that I did not put that much thought into Maul's name, but good on Dan and good on Eve for going the extra length. I did not. I just thought,
I have
I
an
just-
obsession with names.
yeah. I did look. I just thought it was a really, really cool out of the box name for a Star Trek supposed villain.
Yeah, initially I thought maybe it was going to be short for some, which we find out it's more of a nickname because her name is Mali. But I like initially when I saw the name Maul, I thought, well, that can be short for some names like Molly and stuff like that. But
And what species do you think Lack is, or what species would you like him to be?
I want him to be a new species we've never heard of.
So do I.
Yeah, I'm with Eve on this one. And to
He
back
kinda
up my
he looks like the result of a threesome between a Cardassian and Jem'Hadar and
oh my god,
whatever the early Star Trek Discovery Klingons were. Like he looks like the result of that, but
so he's basically a crackpot of different species, I guess, right?
he could be a hybrid. I'd be fine with that.
Well,
Mhm.
President Rillick certainly is. She's
Mhm.
got
Yeah,
certain bloodlines and quite a few.
But yeah, like
she's got,
I would love it if he's
Cardassian.
I would love it if he's something we've never seen before. And if he's
Yeah.
not, I would love it if he's a hybrid because we haven't had enough hybrids. And one thing I do like with Discovery and with all the new Star Treks, to be fair, is that we're seeing some of the races that before were one-ofs or underused, whatever. They're starting to show up more. Like one thing I loved about Enterprise was we really got to see Andorians. I mean, they're one of the founding races, but they've always been in the background. And then we got Commander Shran and the Andorians, and it was like, wow, like this is what Andorians are.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting that a bit with Raynor.
Yeah. And I mean, with Lower Decks, I get that they can do more because it's animated, which is really nice because we're getting like in there, we're getting some of these races like Temerians and Packleds and underused races.
Yeah, I thought it's cool that Raynor is supposed to be Caloran. Like, they only appear in like the Deep Space Nine episode Armageddon game. So I thought it's cool to bring them back. And I also thought, just now, I thought like it might be cool if Lack turned out perhaps to be the same species as Tosk, because like with Tosk from Deep Space Nine, like we never like even understood whether that's like the name of that particular character or the name of the species, or
Yeah, and because we're in the 32nd century, there is the option of having a species that's not beta gamma delta or beta gamma alpha, but possibly deltan. Because we're so far in the future now.
Yeah, everything is up for everything seems more open and everything seems more possible now that we're in the 32nd century.
I think that's why they did it, just because they wanted to show us a little bit of what came before Enterprise and before Kirk, but at the same time, they needed to get rid of canon, so the best way was to jump ahead.
Yeah, no, and and that's one of the reasons why my favorite season of Disco is season 2, because season 2 is basically like Alex Kurtzman and the writers going, okay, guys, to get us out of this big canon snafu, we're going to push everything into a time period that nobody's ever seen before. So here we go.
Yeah, I actually really liked that. And I liked that that Discovery has tied the mirror universe with Section 31, because I have a feeling that could be part of why they had to go underground. Because what if there's more mirror universe people in there?
It's possible. It's definitely possible.
I'd be very surprised if well, my working theory is I totally think that they will move Federation HQ, as it's referred to in the first episode, rather than headquarters, back to Earth, or an actual planet being headquarters rather than like the space station being used still.
Yeah,
that's interesting, because I totally forgot that Earth is not technically a part of the Federation yet. Or they're apart from the Federation at this time, right?
They're kind of apart and separate out of protectionism.
But I think
Right.
they expressed interest in rejoining at the end of the fourth season.
Yeah. Yeah, but they don't actually sign anything, do they?
No.
Not-
By the
Okay,
way,
okay.
did anyone else get Andromeda vibes off of Zora?
No, I did not personally.
I did because I mean, in Star Trek, it's always been computer, computer, computer. But in Discovery, we've got Zora do this, Zora do that, and
Yeah.
it's AI. So it reminded me of Andromeda, where the AI is like its own being.
I got Short Trek's Calypso vibes.
Okay, that works too. I just thought Andromeda because it's also a Roddenberry like franchise,
Property? Yeah.
and it just
With-
made, which is funny because I'm a Legend of Zelda fan, and the Zora are water people.
Oh, cool.
And you get to throw the Zora princess is a raging horrible witch, and you get to throw her at enemies to kill them. So
That's cool. That's cool.
every time I hear Zora, I'm thinking that stupid character.
Yeah, with Zora for me, like the first time she was introduced to me in Calypso, and then she's been more part of Discovery. For some reason, my brain goes to dark places. I think of her as like the computer in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh,
Hal.
yeah, Hal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Marcelo. I can't let you think that.
Yeah, right. So yeah. No, but I also really appreciate that Zora is played by the same actress who did the original voice for the Discovery computer. So I really appreciate that. And I think, well, I think it's the same voice actress for Calypso as well. I don't know if I'm right about that or not.
I'm not sure. That'd be more of a Dan question.
Yeah,
From what I recall, it's the same voice actress that does Zorro, like whether it's in Discovery or like that Short Tracks episode called Calypso. But I think that's a different actress from the original, like Discovery ship's computer.
Oh, okay. It's a different voice actress. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw one final question out there because we've been going for a while, but I mean, we've had a lot to say. What is the one thing? What is one question out of any of the questions Discovery has caused you to think of? So this is subjective because everybody's different. What is one question Discovery has raised for you that you are hoping this season finally answers?
I want to know why the Federation, like why we don't see, more captains and more ships. I mean, generally, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never thought of that question, so you caught me a little bit off my toes. I think I might need more time to cook on that, but I can't think of something right now. I'm sorry, guys.
I'm sorry. I have a habit of sometimes coming up with the most weird, overly thought questions.
I thought it was a good question.
No, it's a good question. I just can't think of anything right now.
Yeah, since Discovery's moved into the 32nd century from, season 3, 4, and now 5, the entire time, because they feature so much into the first season and, a little bit in the second season, the whole time I've been like, what's happened to the Klingons of the 32nd century? So I'd love it if that,
fair. Yeah.
If they were at least referred to.
No, that's actually fair. I didn't even think about the fact that Klingons haven't showed up.
That would be cool. It would be really shocking to find out that, through the years the Klingons just destroyed themselves for whatever reason, because we do know that there are certain sections of Klingons who just don't like each other.
Duras.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But that's a great question, Dan.
for me, the question I really want answered, and it's not so much a question, but an idea. I'm just going to say, don't let me down on this progenitor thread. I want it to be something super amazing, something that we don't see coming, that makes you sit there and go, holy hell, this is why I love Star Trek. I want that. I want to know, like, what the bit, why all of a sudden this is a thing, why they're tracking this down now. Because I mean, obviously for centuries, it's not been an issue. Like TNG did the episode and then they dropped it after that. You know, which was sad because it was the first time you had like a Klingon and a Ferengi and a Romulan and you had, you know, all these races that hate each other working together. But for me, it's don't let me down. Do not give me some half-baked nonsense ending. I want a ending that makes me go, holy crap. Sorry, my language, but that's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, you want it to matter.
Yes. I want an ending that it's like, I've loved Discovery. I'm not one of those, I've had my issues with it, but I'm not one of those people who's like, oh my God, it's disgusting, blah, blah, blah. It's not Star Trek. I don't think that. I'm like, yeah, it's got its good and its bad. But I want this to be like, wow, they really brought that home. Don't give me an Enterprise ending. If they give me an Enterprise ending, I am going to be so angry and I'm going to make a whole rant video.
Yeah. The one thing that I'm concerned about as a writer, and this was brought to my attention in one of the conversations I had this in the last couple of days. Aleph Kurtzman is not credited as a main writer on any of these episodes, and it really pisses me off that Michelle Paradise is writing the finale with some stock writer, with some generic writer from the room. That really makes me upset because I'm like, but whatever, it's fine.
Well, it wasn't planned as a final season.
That is true. That is true. That is true.
And she also wrote the first episode, like one of the ones that we're reviewing, the first episode of season 5.
Right. Right, that is true. That is a point that I did not consider, Dan. When they were going into this, they did not know it was the end. That was a point that I did not consider. Thank you, Dan.
Which is kind of like a few of the Star Treks where they didn't know their last season was going to be the final season.
Right.
I mean, Next Generation wasn't supposed to go past the big goodbye, which is why it has the title it does. You know, like they've had that, like the original Star Trek was canceled after 2 seasons and they managed to bring it back for one more, but it says 5-year mission because they didn't know.
Right.
You know, it's an Enterprise. I think they didn't know that one was being canceled either, which is why we got that half-baked, you know.
Well, they did know that they found out during the making of the In and Out of Darkly 2-parter.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But yeah, the ending just felt so half-baked.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Berman and Braga were thinking on that one. I have no idea.
Picard, I love certain aspects of Picard, but it felt like, I don't know if you guys have ever watched Japanese anime shows where within Japanese anime, you have the show, like I'm going to use Sailor Moon as an example because Sailor Moon is fairly widely known. Within Sailor Moon, there's 5 seasons of Sailor Moon, but each season is its own story and only loosely connected to the previous. And Picard gave me that kind of disjointed feeling. Like each season of Picard was its own story and only vaguely connected to the bigger time frame.
Yeah, I thought it was like interesting with these 2 episodes. Like, not only did it refer to like Tilly going off to the Starfleet Academy, as happens in the 4th season, but also like with Book, like DMA and him helping refugees.
Yeah, no. Just a quick word. The way that Picard was handled for all 3 seasons, having different showrunners for every season, and having basically the seasons be apart from one another, drove me crazy. It drove me insane. Like,
it drove me crazy, and they could have saved it by doing one thing at the very end, and it's the one thing that Dan knows. I will take this to the grave. This is the hill I will die on.
That?
Why was it Q with Jack? It should have been Q Jr. with Jack. Then it would have totally fit and come full circle, as in their dads had been antagonistic and poking each other for years. So it would make more sense to have Junior come at the last episode. And
that entire
Junior.
episode gives me a really sore head.
What, Dan?
Sure.
In fact, that entire season gives me a really sore head trying to watch it when the lighting's so dim. But especially that final episode where it ends exactly the same way as the Next Generation, with them sitting around the table playing cards. I'm like,
Yeah.
do we really need a rerun, in exactly the same circumstances? It just didn't make sense at all to me.
Yeah, no, for me, it
I
was
think
just, they should have had Q Junior. Like, why didn't you bring in Junior? Then I would have been like, bang, I love this. This is awesome.
And
Yeah, I
also,
really-
like,
Oh, sorry,
writing
Dan,
out
go ahead.
loud. Sorry, like, I'm trying to get off my Star Trek Picard soapbox here, but I think Lattice deserved better. Anyway.
She did.
She did.
She deserved Hoodles better. Look. Even now that Dan is off his soapbox, if I could just step on mine for just 1 minute.
Go for it.
Dodge. The decision to, oh my God, look, all due respect to Michael Chabon, I think he's a brilliant writer, but what he did with Dodge, I was like, oh my God, what are you doing, man? Oh God. It killed me. It killed me.
I totally get you. The only part of Picard season 3 that really jived with me, other than Amanda Plummer, quite frankly, like seeing her on screen
That was
doing
cool.
the hair spinning, you could totally see she's her father's child. And totally channeling him. The only thing in Picard season 3 that worked for me, and the only thing really in Picard that truly worked for me, because don't get me started on how Hugh died and how Icheb died. Bruce Maddox dying, I was cheering for that. That guy deserved it. But don't get me started on the ex-Borg dying. And Captain Shaw was brilliant. But the only thing that worked for me in Picard, and it's funny because I used to belong to a different podcast, which is a long story. And I remember saying, as soon as they brought Jack in as Picard's son and they were teasing at the Borg thing, I remember before they even said it in the show, like episodes before, I said, we've never seen truly what would happen if somebody was an ex-Borg and they reproduced. Because, and I'm going to be scientific here, so I'm not trying to be TMI for you guys, because this might feel TMI because you guys are guys, but when the way humans reproduce, women are born with all their reproductive cells, but men are constantly regenerating theirs day after day after day. And we know from Voyager that you can't fully remove all of the Borg from somebody who's been made a Borg. And so I said, with that as a science thing, it totally makes sense that Jack could have some kind of Borg, like Borgness in his DNA, because if Picard fathered him, we don't know exactly how that would affect male reproductive DNA cells, because it's never been discussed. And the thing is, a couple episodes later, when that came out, that was what happened, I was sitting there going, okay, I was a little bit tipsy and thinking too much, and somehow I came up with that. That was the only thing that worked for me in that season.
And you just reminded me of like the first episode where you see the Borg, then they've got like the Borg nursery with the babies in it.
Oh, that creeped me out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but Borg babies creep me out.
Yeah, I mean, there was...
Borg will feature into this final season of Discovery. Would you like to see them return?
Oh God, no! Please, no more Borg.
I would, but Dan, I don't think it fits. It's kind of like how they've said no one's heard from the Q in centuries. I think if they brought in Borg or Q, it would just feel like they're going, "Oh, let's shove this in here because fans like it." Sort of like, I'm going to use an example that's closer to home for you, Dan. Doctor Who with Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, and I'm not dumping on the actress. I've seen her in other things. She's a great actress. She's terrible as the Doctor, and
the writing was a problem.
The writing is a problem, but the actress also was not committing to the role. She was doing other projects and didn't want to commit.
I don't agree with each of them.
But but if you notice, the ratings were so bad for the show, and they were, that in one episode they dumped in the Daleks, the Cybermen, and John Barrowman as Captain Jack, because those are the three things that'll make fans watch it. And it felt like such a last ditch attempt. So to me, like, if they were to bring in Borg or Q or anything like that, it would feel like they're trying to force it, if that makes sense. It wouldn't feel natural to the show, because Borg have not featured in Discovery, Q have not featured in Discovery.
Yeah, no, and also this is their last attempt to really do something different and swing for the excuse my language, and swing for the damn fences. And I would rather have them do that than to fall back on some generic villains that we've seen a billion gazillion times in Star Trek. And I'm tired of the Borg.
I thought it's interesting as well that, like, with the scenario you see in the first episode of season 5 of Discovery, you know, with the newly, apparently, you know, the newly rediscovered, as it were, pardon the pun, Romulan science vessel, like, you don't see, like, the, you know, any mention of the authorities on Navarre, you know, like where the Vulcans and Romulans having reunified basically, and now living on what's formerly Vulcan and now renamed Navarre, like, be informed about that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm gonna exercise my powers here as host, because we're going on 2 hours here, which for us is actually quite a bit.
It's fitting for discussing
It is,
1 hour
it is,
episodes.
it is, and that's why I haven't been big on watching it. But I know we also all have responsibilities and things. But any final thoughts on where this is going? These 2 episodes. What are your final thoughts? I'm going to start with you, Marcelo.
I thought that this was a good start to the season, and I'm really hopeful that the final season of Discovery will be fun, not too complicated, and I do believe that they're going to land the ship with this mystery that they set up.
Okay, Dan, what are your thoughts?
I thought it was a really strong start to the 5th season. Someone very recently mentioned that they thought already it was it excelled above season 4, and I agree with that. And so I've seen like the first 4 episodes of season 5, thanks to screeners, and I watched these first 2 episodes. I thought it was a really strong start. Then I listened to a podcast that's recorded by Laurie Ulster and another person who works on the website trekmovie.com, and they gave their ratings for the first 4 episodes, and they said so they went through like episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, and by the time they got to 4, they both agreed that like that's their favorite episodes of the first 4. And I listened to the podcast not having seen episode 4, and I was like how can you possibly get better than the first 2 episodes? I thought it was a really strong start to the season. But so I was a bit like skeptical and doubtful, that season 4 can be even better than that. And then I watched episode 4 and I'm like, this is brilliant. This is amazing.
Yeah, and we can't talk. You and I can't talk about the episodes we've seen that haven't aired, so I get that.
Not the events of them, but yeah, I definitely think better is to come. But at the same time, like, I think it's really, episodes 1 and 2 are a really strong start to season 5.
My final thoughts are a little less Star Wars, please. I'm not against Star Wars, but a little less Star Wars. And do not let me down. Do not give me an Enterprise pulled out of their butt, half-baked ending. Give me a solid ending. And I'm going to put this out there too. I'm disappointed that due to the passing of Kenneth Mitchell, who featured prominently as multiple characters in Discovery, that we won't be, able to see any more of him in Star Trek. To me, that makes it a little bit sad. So
Absolutely.
because I mean, he was Cole Shaw, he was Tenovic, he was Invigilator Aurelio, and he just passed a few months back. So it's kind of sad that we're not going to see more of him, but you know, it's great that the show did what they did with his character and worked around his condition and everything. But all I'm going to say is don't let me down with the ending. I don't want some Enterprise hologram ending that doesn't happen. Give me a good ending.
Amen to that.
So, all right. So this has been a longer podcast than usual, and I didn't have an outline. So I'm hoping if anybody's watching now or those who are watching after it airs, go easy on me. I didn't have an outline, and I found out I was hosting like 2 hours before. So that said, hopefully we see you guys out there next week. If you're watching the live stream or if you're watching this later, hit the subscribe button. We'd love to have you watch, comment on our show, and join us next week when we talk about episode 3 of Discovery. I'm going to ask my co-pod members to give us anything they want to say as a farewell or any projects they're working on. And then I'm going to wish everyone a happy weekend. So Marcelo, any projects or anything you want to share before we go?
Yeah, if you guys want to see more of what I do have a YouTube channel. It's called Balloon Head Productions, where I do reviews, watch-alongs, and other stuff as well. So if you like me and you like my machinations about not only Star Trek but on other things, you can come over there and check me out over there.
Dan?
Okay. Thank you so very much for watching this channel. Thank you so much to Eve and Marcelo for taking part in it. Thank you for watching, like even if you're watching like after we've been live. As Eve said, please subscribe and do all the things. Follow and like and all the rest of it. And nowadays, thanks to Marcelo, like on our various social media accounts can be found on the website address www.subspacechatter.com. Personally, I can be found at www.danlecki.com. And yeah, I really have enjoyed this discussion. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the 5th season of Discovery and discussing that. I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that this 5th season not having been planned as a final season, that it might seem rushed, the finale, when they get to it. But there's certainly good things to come up. So yeah, I hope you join us for that and enjoy the content produced and presented by Subspace Chatter, and live long and prosper.
And I'm Eve Zellick. I always have tons of projects on the go, but I am currently reading my way through the biography of composer Jade Chataway, best known to Trek fans for The Inner Light. And I'll be writing a review of that very shortly, which will be available on warpfactortrek.com. Other than that, I am a musician and I publish arrangements and transcriptions of sheet music, and I'm currently working my way through the Star Trek catalog. So if you're a musician, hobbyist, teacher, whatever, and you're interested in some good Star Trek sheet music, just punch in my last name. My first name is cumbersome, but my last name, there's only one of me. Type in my last name on sheetmusicdirect.com and sheetmusicplus.com. And now on musicnotes.com, and you will find my Star Trek arrangements. I do it as a fan, but they're out there for you guys. And if you're interested in being a Star Trek fan and doing a lot of Star Trek stuff, there's always sfi.org. It's the official Starfleet International. We're always looking for new people, and I'm with the Starfleet Academy College of Music. So live long and prosper, and hope to see you guys all next week. It's been great having you, and thank you to everybody who participated and everybody who watches now and watches later. Live long and prosper.